When it comes to self-development, no matter the method you're using, the vital point is to practice. If you're ready to transform your life and live with clarity, purpose, and wholeness, then you're in the right place. Welcome back to The Vital Point. I'm your host, Jonathan Schechter. I'm a breathwork facilitator and integration coach. The goal of this show is to inspire you to take action for yourself, whether you're taking the first step on your journey of healing and self-discovery, or you're already a seasoned traveler. The truth is, you have the capacity to evolve and bring your intentions and dreams into the world, and there's never been more access to so many incredible modalities that can help you on your journey. This podcast will help you learn simple methods you can use to change your life, with guided practices and interviews with practitioners doing the work. I want you to feel confident and inspired to take the next step on your own pathway to integration and wholeness. So take a deep breath and let's drop in. This is season 10. Welcome back, episode 103. And it has been a minute. On this episode, I want to share what's been going on in my life and in my world and the things that I feel like I'm learning that, can help you. Also, just to give you an idea of what to look forward to with this new batch of episodes that will be dropping. First of all, thank you for being here. I know that there's lots of podcasts and lots of things that you could be doing with your time. So I really appreciate you being a part of the audience, a part of the show, part of the Blue Magic Alchemy community. And when I've thought about this new season, when I've thought about where I want the podcast to go, the image that has continuously come up is the phoenix. So the phoenix rises from the ashes of its own immolation, right? Its own death, and is reborn from those ashes. And I really can't think of a better metaphor for the podcast and the journey that it's taken over the last few months than that phoenix, right? And the reality is that part of the break that I took was from getting burnt out. Not necessarily on just the podcast, but that was a big part of it. But just 2024, I pushed myself really hard towards expansion. I launched a course with Tricycle Day and then turned that course into a live group coaching container. And I didn't fully understand how taxing that was going to be on my mental health, on my nervous system. The other thing that was happening, and this one is a little bit harder to explain, but it's also something that I find a lot of somatic practitioners can relate to, is that as I've done more and more somatic work, I am less and less interested in pushing myself over my threshold of overriding my body's clear messages that it's tired, that it wants to rest, that the things that I'm so driven to do, that they can't wait. And so it's not exactly burnout, but more so feeling less motivated to override myself. Really what happened, the episodes with guests that I had met at the MAPS conference in early summer of 2023, those episodes didn't even start dropping until 2024. And why is that? Well, I had this backlog of episodes that I had recorded, and I had to get through those before I started to post the MAPS episodes. And then I had all these episodes from, we'll just call it the MAPS episodes. And then there were still episodes that I was recording. And another thing to mention that's important to the context of this is that I'm coming up now on 2 years of being full-time with Blue Magic Alchemy. In other words, when I first started, when I launched the company and started to do breath work and integration with people, I was still working job. I was still in corporate America, and along the way I quit. And one of the things that that job had afforded me was a lot of extra money to, and one of the things that I was doing with that money was paying for someone to help me edit the podcast and, keeping me really motivated to just keep churning them out. And in the absence of some of that extra money, that was one of the things that I cut. And not only did I cut that area financially, I was also doing a lot of work on these new projects and programs to support myself financially. It was an easy decision to prioritize things that were, you know, vital for my financial security. And the podcast started to get sort of pushed to the side, not because I don't love doing it, but just out of necessity and, only having so many hours in the day. As that was happening, as I was pushing myself on these, projects, that's where I started to feel that, do I really want to work on the podcast right now? And just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about as far as that overwhelm and overriding, I work a few days a week at a treatment center. And I used to come home in the evening, 8 o'clock or so, and maybe sit and eat and, decompress for 30 to 60 minutes. And then that was my podcast time, was from, let's say, 9 p.m. to midnight. And this was after, an 8-hour day of seeing patients and running integrative groups and breath work. And of course, I was going to do that because, hey, I got to find time to do the podcast. And all of a sudden, with everything else happening, I was just less and less willing to do that. I was much more focused on rest and letting myself have time for relaxation, just started to become much more of a priority. And at the same time, there was this internal reminder and this internal push of, oh my God, you have to get the podcast done. You have all these episodes you've recorded. What if you stop recording or stop putting out new episodes and people stop listening? What if, well, and there's there's the root of it for me, is what if everybody leaves you? What if nobody cares about you? What if nobody loves you because you're not constantly putting out content? And as I started to go through this period of burnout and adjustment and trying to reposition my life and in certain ways get more motivated to come back to the podcast, because I love doing the podcast, it gave me this chance to pause and to reflect, to work on some of those things as far as self-worth and, feelings of abandonment. And all of this was just a part of what I was going through, because I don't think that there's been a year that I can remember like 2024 where there was so much expansion. And at the same time, there was a lot of what you might call failure. And it's only because I was able to sit and be with these uncomfortable feelings of questioning, where is my self-worth and my self-love coming from? Am I doing things because I'm excited and passionate about doing them and I want to help people? Or is it for approval because of a fear of abandonment, things like that, that I was able to expand and fail, right? Before I would have just stayed small and played it safe. And all of a sudden, I found myself really out on the ledge where I couldn't do that. I would even say less on the ledge and more like sort of a Looney Tune situation where I had already run off the cliff and I hadn't really looked down yet. Isn't that an interesting metaphor in those cartoons that you can keep running on the air without falling until you look down? And at some point, I looked down and it gave me the opportunity to look at a lot of things and to be honest with myself that some of the things I was doing with the podcast was, I don't know if I want to call it chasing clout or just wanting the show to be bigger and more successful. But some of the people I interviewed or was pursuing for interviews, I started to question, do I really want to have these people on the podcast? What's my motivation here? Is it because I really want to share this person's message with you and I want to learn things and I'm excited to highlight them and give them, a platform and exposure? Or is it because they have a big audience or, big brand recognition and I think that having them on the show is going to bring more people and more listeners to the show? And I'm not trying to shame myself. There was a point in time, where that felt important to me. And in this pause, in this break, I started to realize that it was less important to me because it was coming from a place of lack and feeling like I needed to do this to stay afloat rather than this beautiful creative project that I love and I feel excited to put my time and my energy into. So I had these, tough questions with myself. I had these questions with myself of, do I want to keep doing this? And the answer that kept coming back was yes, but not in the way that you have been doing it. And there was one episode in particular, I don't think it's ever going to air. And shout out to Cam Leeds from the Trip Sitting podcast, who's a friend and who really inspired me to take that step. Because in my mind, while I recorded it and this person has a big audience and, of course I need to put it out. But the interview was just, it was not good. There was no synergy. I felt conflicted as I was recording it. And talking with Cam about it, he's like, brother, if you're not feeling it, it's your show. Don't put it out. And so it helped to bring some of these things to the surface. And then it also created space where it was like, okay, well, if you don't want to keep doing this same thing, what do you want to do? And it led to some really interesting realizations for me. One, and you might be listening to this sort of shaking your head and going, well, that seems obvious. But I honestly didn't realize that a show about integration and me being so focused on my own transformation and integration that the podcast wasn't going to stay the same. I think there was this vision that I had at one point that I could just keep doing interviews with people and keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and that I was going to be happy with that. And, I hit this major milestone last year of getting 100 episodes done. I was really focused on getting that done last year and pushing myself into doing that. And then just realizing like, man, I'm not interested in doing the same thing that I've done 20 times before again with somebody else. It just, it's not worth my energy. I'm sorry if that feels harsh, but it's not enough motivation for me to override my system. I'd rather, take the time and relax because I am working incredibly hard. And right now this podcast is my baby. I'm the only one working on it. I guess what I'm saying is that it has to be worth it to me. It's more of like a Rick Rubin sort of attitude, you know? And I think that reading Rick Rubin's book last year, the Creative Act, which is behind me here, did have an impact on me because what he's saying as his ethos, and I really respect Rick Rubin and I like him a lot, is make your art for yourself. And if somebody else likes it, cool. That's beautiful. That's great. And if you're making it for somebody else, it's not going to be as good and you're not going to like it. You're going to sacrifice the integrity of that creative expression. And I'm having this awakening, I'm having this unveiling inside of myself in the midst of being buried in this mountain of interviews that I've already recorded. Like there was so much momentum in what was already happening energetically with the podcast. And so the pause was kind of like letting it die a little bit, like let myself just stop doing this thing that I'm not excited to do anymore. That's the death part of the phoenix. And also in the midst of trying to dig myself out of this hole, there were a few episodes that I had recorded that I was really, really excited about. And as I was recording them, I'm like, yes, this feels right. This is what I want to do. And then I found myself in this very frustrating situation of, okay, what do I do with everything that I have sitting around? Should I just scrap it and start doing these other things that I want to do? I really wanted to get to that 100 episodes. I was really excited to hit that milestone. So I feel like this season, season 10, we're calling it the Phoenix season, is this rebirth process. There are things in this season, there are episodes that I recorded back then, and there are things that I recorded in the last 6 months, and there are episodes that I literally recorded over a year ago. There are episodes that are current. Even the old episodes, I'm going to record new intros to them because I'm in a different space. There are different things going on. And it just doesn't feel right to just have those exist as snapshots in time. Like there's a reason, even though they're that old, that I'm still putting them out. There's still really great interviews and really great topics. And thank God that, integration is timeless and not, topical, right? We're not talking about current events. We're talking about the nervous system and breath work and meditation and things that are just timeless. And that I am extremely grateful that I can still use those interviews. But there's also a few things that I'm trying that are new. And that was another thing, was even after 100 episodes, it felt kind of scary to be changing the program up and trying something new. It was like, oh, what if people don't like this? Well, maybe it doesn't matter. So that's the second part, right? Is the rebirth, is the phoenix rising. And so there's some really cool episodes I'm really, really excited to share with you. And I think that in a big way, this season, this next 12 episodes, of which this is number one, there's going to be some amazing things that I'm so excited to share with you. The next episode after this is with Jesse Coomer. That was another reason that everything got paused was, man, this episode with Jesse Coomer, who wrote The Language of Breath, is so great. And as we were recording it, I've never had more technical issues with a podcast than I had recording this one. And I've never had to do more editing to get the podcast to a place where I could share it with you than for this next episode. And that project was kind of overwhelming. And I had to do it in stages. And then I would like sort of get to this place where it felt so overwhelming. And I'm like, okay, I got to stop doing this. I'm going to take a break. But that's coming up. There's an episode with Rachel Broom, who is one of my somatic experiencing mentors. That's a really cool episode. There's another episode with Adam Heaps and his partner from the Energy Stack. There's an episode with Lama Mike Crowley about psychedelic Buddhism. And then we get into some really cool episodes again, this is what I'm talking about, things that I was like, ooh, I really want to try this. It feels a little bit scary because it's outside of the box. And what's the box, right? I created the box so I can create a new box. But there's an experiment with Cam where a lot of the episode is we're attempting to recreate or mirror what it looks like in a somatic integration session with me, right? And these are things that are usually not recorded. These are sacred spaces. You know, doing integration work with a client is a sacred container. And I wasn't sure if it was going to translate into a podcast because first of all, he's not my client. He's my friend. And we don't have that same rapport. And also the set and setting is different. Well, the set and setting is different, right? The set is different in that I'm not like his integration coach. And the setting is different is instead of it being in a private session, we're recording it on a podcast together. And I was really, really curious to see if it was going to turn out good because I felt really strongly that I wanted to start doing more podcasts like this. And I will be. But it takes the right person. And shout out to Cam for so many reasons. Like when I first started to think about this, like not only was Cam the perfect person as far as, he had some pretty major ayahuasca experiences last year and was working on integrating those, but also like Cam is an inspiration to me as far as being authentic to myself with the podcast. He inspired me watching him record a podcast where he was basically under the influence of psilocybin. That was amazing. I was like, wow, that takes a lot of guts to do that. And then we recorded an episode together where we were at the tail end of an MDMA experience. And, just the fact that he was willing to do that and put it on his show, I thought was amazing. So when I had this idea, when it started to cook up in my mind, Cam was just the perfect person. And I think that episode is so good and is one of those Rick Rubin moments where I'm really pleased with it. I feel so good about it. I'm excited to share it with you. And I have no idea how it's going to be received. And then there's another episode, sort of in that same vein. I love Duncan Trussell and I love the Midnight Gospels. That's one of my favorite shows in recent years. The final episode of the Midnight Gospels is from a podcast that he did with his mom. And it's so emotional and it's so true. And I've talked to so many people that have watched it, and we talk about how it's basically impossible to watch it without crying. And that inspired me to want to record an episode with my mom. So my mom was here in Tucson visiting last year, and we sat in her hotel room and recorded a podcast. So there's some really, really cool things, and I'm really excited to share them with you. And the show goes on, right? The phoenix rises from the ashes. I wanted to learn from my own experience. I want this show to come out on a consistent basis. And so it was really important for me to take that time as a break so that I could figure out a new system, come back and feel refreshed and excited to do it. And that was all in spite of the inner experience that I was having. And let me tell you, if you haven't figured this out yet, or if you're like me and you're, listening to this in your office cubicle, or like your job, your job that, you know, you don't feel is aligned with your purpose, and you hate it and you wish you could leave it, and you just dream about being an entrepreneur, owning your own business, doing something that's more connected to purpose, and that's going to be the solution to all your problems. Man, let me tell you a secret. This entrepreneurial journey is really an inner journey. It really forces you to do the work yourself. It's really about my own limited beliefs, my own doubt, my own inner messaging, and being able to sit with that, to love myself, to work through those places that are not accurate and not helping me. And one thing that I've had several realizations about over the past few years is where I'm doing things, whether it's content or my breathwork offerings or where I go to work or the podcast, where I'm doing it on a subconscious level for approval and acceptance outside of myself. And again, having those phoenix moments of burning that down and then rising from the ashes anew. So I'm super excited on letting 2024 and certain parts of 2024 die and what's being reborn. For instance, a big part of 2024 was my course and then the group coaching Elevate experience that came out of the course and all the work that I put into that. Well, at a certain point, I paused that as well because, again, I felt like I was over my threshold. But what came out of it was this new project, the Blue Magic Alchemy Collective, which is on the School, SKOOL platform. And, it's really a nexus point where the paths to integration can converge. And it's become the hub of what I want to do, and creating a community. And it really has all the things that you need in one place. There's a calendar so that you can stay connected and sign up for live breathwork and other integrative workshops and events. There's a message board so that you can interact with other alchemists and practitioners and share your wins and feel supported. And then there's a section where I post guided meditations and breathwork and other integrative practices. And there's so many things that I have planned for the community. For instance, depending on when you're listening to this, there's a live open house. Yes, I am sort of leaning into the school metaphor with different workshops and giveaways. And we're going to do a group meditation challenge, which is going to lead into a live course, and that's going to live on the site. So, check that out if you're listening to this within the first couple of weeks of its release. And even if you're listening later on down the road, all that material is going to live via recording on the school site. So you should just go there anyway and check it out. And I have other, things that I want to plan with that project. And I'm really, really excited about it. And I feel like that was a lesson of various successes and lessons learned from running a group coaching container several times, and also from curating a community of breathwork practitioners over the past few years, instead of focusing on having the most lucrative or the biggest breathwork workshop that I possibly could. And so I really am excited about growing this site and creating this hub of integrative practices to support people. And you can join for free at school.com/Blue Magic Alchemy. I think you might have to put a /about after it, but I'm sure if you just go there to the school platform and search for Blue Magic Alchemy, you can find it. You can also find it on the show page, and all of my, links, all my different social media stuff is now pointing towards that school site. So I really encourage you to come check it out. It's free. We've got new stuff that we're adding all the time to that. And other than that, thanks for being here, and thanks for being a part of this journey. Thanks for listening. I'm really, really excited to share what's going on with the podcast and these new episodes with you. I think they're really great, and they were worth me starting to work on the podcast again. So that says something to me. So thanks so much. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow us on whatever platform you like to consume the podcast on. There's over 100 other amazing episodes, and there's going to be much more coming out weekly. So leave us a review, follow us, share it with a friend, all those things. Come join us in the school community, Blue Magic Alchemy Collective there. And need more integration support, let me know, reach out, come to a breathwork session. There's so many different options for connecting and for supporting your own pathway to integration and your journey to wholeness, which, by the way, you already are. We're just rediscovering that. We're scraping away the layers that keep us from this connection to our inner. So remember, it's not about the method you choose or the pace at which you travel. The vital point is to consistently show up for yourself in practice. As the saying goes, it's the destination, but the journey that truly matters. And I'm honored to be on this journey with you. To reach out, to connect, to share your journey, the successes and challenges. Let me know what you thought of this episode. I'm just an email, DM, or review away. Let's journey, grow, and transform together. Thanks again for tuning in. Until the next episode, keep exploring, keep growing, and above all, keep practicing, because that's the vital point.